Hello everyone, welcome back to the Audit and Attestation class. In this class, we'll be understanding in detail about audit engagement. So let's dive into for more detail.
Let's get into the documentation. Work not documented, work not done. That's clear definition in audit industry, right? So documentation is very critical and very, very important part for the audit and assurance practice, right? So in audit engagement, like we are covering both like audit and non-audit engagement. If you see left hand side 2.4.1, so that we are covering audit engagement, and 2.4.2 is non-audit engagement. What are non-audit engagement? Review engagement, preparation, compilation, and
attestation.
attestation. So what all comes in attestation?
Examination, agreed upon procedures, review.
And review also. Yes, absolutely true. So let's look at first left hand side, which is audit. So audit could be for issuer and for non-issuer, right? So archive, do you know what is archive of documentation?
No, sir.
Okay.
Like we
So,
have
yes, please. Ayush, go ahead.
the records which we keep after the audit is done. That is like we have to keep them for 45 days, sir.
Okay. How about others? How about others? Anyone would like to add to Ayush?
Practically, where I have seen in WhatsApp, sir, like if you or do you want to archive this account?
Sorry.
But I think
In WhatsApp, there will be option that do you want to archive this account? Like it will be in the background when we get a message. We will not get any notification. I mean, I've seen this word.
Sorry, I didn't understand your point. In WhatsApp, what you said?
I have seen this word in, I think it is archive, not archive. Okay, sir, got it.
Sorry, I didn't understand your point, Sandeep.
Leave my point, sir. I will explain later. No issues.
Okay, so is there any typo error here or in notes, like any such thing?
No, sir. I don't know.
Okay.
Sir, I think you have shared this in the LinkedIn, in the LinkedIn page as well regarding this, right?
LinkedIn page?
Yes, sir. I've seen one of the
creative. Yes, we do informative posts also. Yeah. Got it. Yeah, so I'm sure you might have read that. Have you read the caption as well?
Yes, sir. For the issuer, we will have 7 years of that, and non-issuer we will have 5 years of that. But I don't know like what's the
What is archival?
what is that?
Okay, we are coming to that. Okay, anyone else would like to try what is archival? Avneet, any idea what is archival?
Not really sure, sir.
Not really sure. Okay, so I'll make your life easy. So throughout your audit, you maintain an audit documentation, right? In that audit documentation, you have two kind of file. One is permanent file and one is recurring file or concurrent file. Right, in permanent file, generally we keep like the document which required year over year, not only for current year. Those documents will be required in future year also. Like for example, memorandum of association, article of association, incorporation certificate, or maybe VAT certificate, P10, or maybe tax deduction numbers, right? So or maybe like lease agreement, or maybe like let's say they have any customer contract or any supplier contract, or maybe any, if they have labor union, like contract with the labor union, right? So those kind of agreements, contract which goes like more than a year, right? Those kind of documentation to be kept in permanent file, and those information and document which is being relevant for the current year, right? Relevant for the current year. For example, like you have tested certain samples, right? You have verified certain samples. So evidence relating to those samples, if you have taken a copy of that, or your audit work paper, right? For example, right? Minutes of the meetings, right? Or maybe like any rent agreement for current year. Let's say if it is 11-month rent agreement, right? So that is being relevant for the current year. So those all documentation to be maintained in current year audit file, right? That is called concurrent file or recurring file. So there are two kind of audit documentation. One is permanent document and second is current year document, right? So both these files you need to complete ideally before you sign up the audit engagement, right? For example, you are doing the audit for the financial year 2021, and your report release date is, let's say, 25th February 2022. So it's being your responsibility to ensure all the evidence you have collected before signing the audit report, right? That means before 25th of February, it is being your responsibility that you need to ensure that all documentation and evidence is being complete, which is giving you evidence to conclude and sign up the audit report, right? After that, what it says, within 45 days for listed company for issuer, and within 60 days from the report release date, you need to archive these files. That means you need to put this audit file in a safe custody, right? So these 45 days are generally for administrative purpose, or you can say what you can say, cleaning up process. You know, like when you're doing an audit of like big company, like let's say Amazon, Facebook, Google, Trimble, General Motors, Food, like such kind of big company. So it has like huge number of documentation, right? A lot of Excel sheets, a lot of calculation, a lot of work paper is being required. Even though you have reviewed everything and you are in a position to conclude, but you still need to clean up certain documents to be in the final audit file, right? You are probably not required like hanky-panky stuff in your audit file, because your audit file are subject to many reviews, like your internal reviews, quality control review, right? Your peer reviews, like other CPA can come and review your audit work paper, right? If you are doing audit of a listed company, then PCOB can also do the review, right? And your audit documentation and audit work paper is everything what you do. That is a shield for you to safeguard or protect yourself for any negligence, or for any litigation, or for any claims, or for any mishappenings in the future, right? So if you maintain proper documentation, then only you would be in a position to justify in front of the client, in front of the reviewer, in front of the court, that you have not done anything wrong. If, for example, anything went wrong in the company, how do you justify yourself, right? If, let's say, in case of, let's say, Satyam, we all know about, most of us know about Satyam scam, right? What exactly was the scam? So they were recording the fixed deposits, they were recording the bank balances, but the auditor has not taken the confirmation from bank, and the all amount was like kind of cooked account. So they were not having bank balance, they were not having fixed deposit, they were not having security deposit, they were not having investment, but they were showing in the financial statement, and auditor has not taken the confirmation from third party, and based on like management reports and management information which they have provided, they were signing up the balance sheet, right? Now when this PCOB review has happened, they have got caught, right? They got such a big so many $1 million of penalties, as well as debarred for 3 years for conducting any audit of the issuer, and then that partner has got like imprisonment for such a long time. if they could have taken the confirmation from the bank or investments or wherever those securities were lying from third party, then they would be in a position to give the justification that we have done our job properly. We have done our job with due care and due diligence, right? So how do you justify any third person when you have appropriate documentation, right? Make sense? Yes, no?
Yes, sir.
So those
Yes, sir.
documentation, imagine about such a big company like Google, Amazon, Bank of America, Barclays, Genpact, or maybe like some of your companies in which you are working, right? If somebody needs to conduct the audit of that company, such a big company, they require IT team, right? They require tax team, they require actuarial, they require independent valuer, right? They should have like a huge audit team for different location, right? To compile everything, because the timelines for the issuer to issue the audit report is 45 days, 60 days, sorry, right? That means for the financial year ending December, the auditor mandatorily has to, or company mandatorily has to submit the report with the SEC within 60 days. That means by 28th of February, they need to file their financial statement. So at some time is a very difficult and aggressive timeline. So auditor may conduct the audit, they will evaluate and identify all the documentation, and basis that they sign up the report. But still after that, a lot of cleaning up exercise is being required. For example, you have taken a depreciation schedule and you have done the recomputation, but you need to make all the audit notes that how you have extracted that depreciation schedule, how you have ensured the completeness, what all things you have checked in calculation, right? Any of you have done any like audit documentation?
Yes, sir.
So what all things you mention in that audit documentation?
So mainly bank statement.
What do you do?
External confirmations. So
Yeah.
primarily the first audit documentation whenever we do an audit is bank statement. Next, external confirmations. Next, their returns, GST returns data from the official website of GST. Next, our document like management representation letters for any clarity. For an issue where we don't have any clarity, we get the clarity from them. Since my area of auditing is very limited, I will maintain only these things, sir. No any additional.
Sir, for audit documentation, you need to provide, bank statement, bank reconciliations, and then, all the related balance sheet items with the, proof of, with the proof of, documentation for all the balance sheet things.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find out if I have any audit document work paper with me. Not in this computer. Maybe. Sorry. Yeah. So maybe for example, like if you are auditing, let's say any depreciation schedule we were discussing. So there it is being required for you for an appropriate documentation that you need to mention from where you have extracted that work paper. How do you have ensured the completeness of that work paper? What all mathematical accuracy you have calculated, and how you have calculated those mathematical accuracies. Like those kind of documentation you need to make as an auditor. What is the objective of audit documentation? Basically, objective of audit documentation is that if you have given any audit work audit file to an independent auditor who has not conducted the audit of that company, right? So as he will review that audit documentation and understand the nature, timing, and extent of the audit procedure performed and the conclusion made. based on that. So your audit documentation should be so clean that any independent auditor who has not conducted that audit, but he has experience of audit, right? So he can review your work paper and understand what is the nature, timing, and extent of the audit procedure you have performed and what all conclusion you have made in the respective audit procedure, right? How do you ensure that? For that, there is a lot of literature required to be documented in audit work paper. That takes like some amount of time, even after you have signed the balance sheet, even after you have issued the audit, right? And then some cleaning up activity, like for example, you have like big warranty sheets, let's say, or any sales incentive sheets, or sales register, or purchase register, or journal register, right? So you need to look at what all documentation are relevant for the audit and what are not relevant. You will be removing those things. For that, you require some amount of time. And then once you archive that file, that means it's finally closed and sealed. Then you will not be reopening that file again. It's only will be open when any reviewer, court, or PCOB demand for it, right? So that is called archival of audit documentation. Archival of audit documentation for issuer within 45 days from the report release date. That means the day you have released the report, from that date to 45 days, you need to submit your audit work paper in the archival records. Like it's a separate library or separate database, or you can say separate store. That is a quality control standard you need to follow at a firm level. And for non-issuer, you have 60 days after the report release date. Make sense? Any doubt here? What is archival now?
Sir, what is 7 years and 5 years? Maybe I
No,
missed
we
that
are
point.
coming to that.
Okay,
No,
okay.
we have not explained yet. So as of now, we are still at archival. So are you guys comfortable? What we need to do after the report release date in this 45 days? And once we submit the documentation for archival, it will go in a local rooms. Right? Then after, auditor cannot make any change in those audit documentation after the 45 days or after the 60 days. Make sense? Yeah, Kashish, Sandeep, Rahul,
Sir.
Pavneet, all good?
So that access to that archival repository is with the auditor itself, right?
Yes, but he should not exercise. He should not make any change. That the archival records will be retrieved only when there is any requirement for review, whether it's internal or external.
As a general practice, so basically, if we take an example of EVA, if we just an example, we start with a cash PSP. So what we usually do is we just look forward to the previous year documentation, the canvas, and we try to understand what procedure was performed last year, something like that. So in that way, it's a very, for us as a senior or a staff or a manager in EY, it's very easy to access last year documentation.
That is a copy you get. Original, you cannot make change in previous year file.
Okay.
You have no access to make any change in the previous year file. That required like office managing partner approval.
Okay. So that's a replica of
yes,
those
you will get the
documents.
replica for the reference purpose.
Okay.
Anyone else have doubt on archival?
Archivable is, I think, it's mandatory for, in order to, like.
So that like auditor will not fudge any additional document, should not change any documentation after the signing off. Right.
Okay.
So it's being controlled on auditors so that he or she cannot do any, you can say, further cooking of any accounts or audit documentation. Now, second point here is retention. So in the archival record, how many years you need to retain those work papers? For the issuer, it is 7 years from the report release date. And for non-issuer, it is 5 years from the report release date, unless and until there is a longer period required by the law. For example, if you're doing single audit as well, in addition to normal audit, in that case, it is 10-year requirement. Right? If any law, for example, any tax law required, any federal law required, or any state law required, longer period, then you need to maintain for longer period. But as per AICPA, you are required to maintain the audit documentation for 5 years for the non-issuer. And as per PCOB, for the issuer, it is required to maintain for 7 years. Right?
So this is maximum limit or minimum limit?
Minimum.
So, okay. And if you want to keep them beyond 7 years, then you have to take approval.
No. That's your internal quality control standard.
Okay.
If your internal quality control standard says you'll be maintaining for 10 years, so then you'll be maintaining for 10 years. But as per PCOB, requirement is 7 years. As per AICPA, for non-issuer, requirement is 5 years.
Okay.
Now coming to the non-audit side, preparation, review, compilation, and attestation engagement, right? In that, source. SSAs. So archive within 60 days from the report release date. So for any non-audit engagement, you will get 60 days from the date you release the report, whether it's a compilation report, review report, attestation report. Attestation include examination, review, and agreed upon procedure. And retention of the documentation is as per the firm policy. Generally, they maintain for 5 years in line with the AICPA guidelines for the audit services. Right? Makes sense? But if there is any regulatory requirement for more year, like for example, if you have done the attestation for research and development expenses, or you have done any attestation for VAT purpose, or you have done any attestation for, let's say, foreign transaction purpose. So there, if those respective law, like how in India we have FEMA for any foreign transaction, right? So they require to maintain the documentation for 10 years. Same way, like if you are doing any attestation service for foreign services, where it is required for maintaining for 7 years or 10 years, then you need to maintain according to the respective law. Otherwise, generally, it goes with the quality control standard of the firm, which are normally 5 years. That is what I have seen in practice. Make sense?